The towel slipped from my hands, but I didn't flinch. Her laugh, a dry, hollow chuckle that clung to the laundry room walls like mildew, made the air feel damp. "You're lucky I even let you touch me," she said. Like I was some charity case who'd won a raffle. Like years of fixing her messes, paying off her credit cards, and holding this marriage together with my bare hands counted for nothing more than a polite inconvenience. She turned away, humming, tossing her blouse into the dryer as if she hadn't just driven a steel spike between us. I just watched her. Not angry, not even sad. Something colder than that. I folded the last t-shirt, the faded one from the state fair, before the veneers, before the Pilates instructor with the ridiculous name, before she stopped asking me how my day was. I folded it slow, precise, like I was handling glass. Her phone buzzed in the hallway. A giggle, then the click-clack of a text being typed. I used to like that sound. Now it just reminded me that good liars always enjoy the setup. I caught my reflection in the hall mirror. Older, sure. A few more lines on the face. But I'm a man who's built machines that can carve titanium to half a human hair's width. I'm not some slob grateful for scraps of affection. And in this house, I wasn't a husband anymore. I was a placeholder. Placeholders don't argue. They execute. That night, while she pretended to watch TV upstairs, I opened the desk drawer in my office. Inside sat a small oak box I'd carved myself after retiring. It was meant for cufflinks. Instead, it had a new purpose. I flipped open my laptop. The folder was already there, months in the making, filled with screenshots, receipts, synced text threads she didn't know I could see. I'd been collecting them piece by piece, waiting for the day she finally gave me the smirk that meant it was time. Well, it was time. I didn't rush. She'd called me slow for years. "You move like you're buffering," she once joked at a dinner party. They all laughed. I smiled. Because slowness isn't weakness. Slowness is precision. The first file in my June Justice folder was an email thread. A realtor friend of hers, Celeste, had forwarded her details about fun weekends in Ridge Hill. Odd thing was, the dates matched perfectly with the so-called training retreats she billed to her brokerage. One email even had a rental car receipt in her name, with a second driver added. That second driver wasn't me. Then the texts. 6 months ago, I'd synced her phone to the family iPad under the guise of "so the guest room can stream Netflix." She never noticed. One thread stood out. Her, "Can't wait to see you outside the sheets for once LOL." Him, thumbs up plus a bathroom mirror selfie, shirtless. I recognized the wallpaper, the Burstone Hotel again. Betrayal even has a smell. That place always reeked of lavender and stale desperation. Another message. Her, "He's nice but dull." A placeholder. My life started late. Dull. Placeholder. I leaned back, breathing slow, letting that one sink in like a cold blade. Not because it hurt, hurt's temporary, but because it confirmed something I'd already started to accept. I wasn't losing her. I'd lost her a long time ago. Every screenshot went into the folder, encrypted, backed up twice, copied to a flash drive. I even made a hard copy, printed in neat chronological order. The kind of thing that plays well in court. Upstairs, she moved around in our bedroom, humming. Maybe she thought she'd already won. I smiled in the glow of the desk lamp. Good. People who think they're safe never see it coming. She came down just after 11, makeup off, robe tied loose, wearing that soft smile she used when she wanted to play the doting wife. "You didn't say good night," she said, fake concern dripping through every syllable. "I figured you were tired of touching me." I replied, smiling just enough to make it unclear if I was joking. She blinked. "You're being dramatic." I gave a slow nod, like a man who didn't mind being underestimated. Because men like me, we don't need second chances. We need evidence. She tilted her head, smirked, the kind of smirk that says you won't do anything. I didn't. Not yet. Instead, I stood, stretched, and left her in the living room without another word. No fight. No scene. Just absence. That gets under the skin more than yelling ever could. In the office, I opened my email. A fresh message to my attorney. Ready to initiate. Sending attachments. Discretion required. The attachments? Every file from the June Justice folder, plus a few extras. A photo of her Range Rover parked outside the Burstone on a Tuesday afternoon. The rental car agreement with the second driver. That text about me being a placeholder, highlighted. By the time she climbed into bed, the first domino had tipped. I lay there beside her, silent, while she scrolled through her phone under the covers. I knew exactly whose messages she was reading, and I knew she had no idea that tomorrow morning, the ground under her was going to start shifting, and she wouldn't even notice until she'd already fallen through. The next morning, she was already dressed when I walked into the kitchen. Tight black skirt, silk blouse, hair in that perfectly messy bun she'd never once worn for me. She was sipping her coffee and half smiling at something on her phone. "Big day?" I asked. She glanced up, lips still curled in that secretive grin. "Always." I poured myself a mug, leaning against the counter like I had nowhere particular to be. "Need me to drop you off?" Her eyes flicked up for just a fraction of a second. "No, I'm meeting clients." She took another sip, set the mug down, and grabbed her purse. "Don't wait up for dinner." I smiled and nodded, like she'd just told me she was picking up dry cleaning. Wouldn't dream of it. The door shut behind her, and the house exhaled. I waited 10 minutes. Long enough for her to get past the neighborhood, short enough for her to still be on her predictable route. Then I picked up the phone and dialed a number I hadn't called in years. "Hey, it's me," I said when a familiar voice answered. "Remember that favor you owe me?" By noon, I had what I needed, a discreet investigator's report from just 2 weeks ago, sitting in my inbox like a loaded chamber. Photos of her at an outdoor cafe with him. Same burstone wallpaper in the background later that evening. Her hand on his knee in one shot, his arms sliding around her in another. They weren't exactly hiding, but they also weren't expecting the right set of eyes to be watching. I packaged the best shots into a single PDF, no captions, no context, just image after image. Then I forwarded it to one person, her boss. Subject line: "Your senior agent. Off the clock." Not petty, strategic. I knew she was up for a major client handoff. Her boss had a reputation for zero tolerance when personal drama bled into the professional image. I didn't even have to ask for anything. I just gave him the match and stepped back from the pile of dry leaves. While that little grenade was rolling under her desk, I moved to the second play. The joint account. We'd always had a yours, mine, ours system, but most of the big-ticket bills still ran through the shared pool. Mortgage, insurance, the credit card she used for business expenses, all of it set up for easy, automatic comfort. I opened the banking app, scrolled to scheduled payments, and started pulling the pins. Mortgage? Canceled. Insurance? Moved to my private account. Utilities? Already transferred. In their place, I set up brand new auto-pay arrangements under my name alone, linked to my separate funds. By the time she tried to buy her $7 oat milk latte tomorrow, she'd find the card declined. And because she'd already maxed her personal card, I checked, she'd be standing there in her power heels with no backup. Yes, it was petty, but pettiness has its place. It's not about the coffee. It's about the seed of panic. Mid-afternoon, my phone lit up. Not her, not yet. It was my attorney. "Got the files. Tight, thorough. We can start the process now, but I think you're going for more than just a clean break, right?" I chuckled. "Let's just say I want the ending to be educational." He paused. "Then you'll like what I found. You still have the prenup?" "Of course," I said. "Then you know Clause 14, the one about moral turpitude? If we prove infidelity with documented evidence, she forfeits her claim to the marital assets beyond her initial contribution, which, from what I've seen, wasn't much." I could almost hear him grinning through the phone. "Keep building your file," he said. "Don't tip her off. The cleaner this is, the harder it hits." After we hung up, I leaned back in my chair, feeling that quiet satisfaction that comes when you're not just reacting, you're controlling the board. By 5:30, I heard her Range Rover in the driveway. I was at the kitchen counter, pouring a drink, calm as a Sunday sunrise. She walked in slower than usual, her bag hanging loose from one shoulder. She didn't even take off her sunglasses. "How was your day?" I asked. She set her bag down with a little more force than necessary. "Fine. You eat." Her lips tightened. "Not hungry." We danced through the evening in polite silence. She scrolled on her phone in the living room. I read in the office. No fights, no accusations. But I could feel the shift, the faint static in the air of someone who's had an unexpected bump in their road and isn't sure yet where it came from. At exactly 8:12 p.m., her phone buzzed. She read the message, then set it down carefully, face down, on the arm of the couch. A minute later, she walked into the kitchen, her voice wrapped in forced casualness. "Did you move money from the joint account?" I sipped my drink. Why? It's just, the mortgage payment didn't process today, and my card got declined this afternoon. I looked thoughtful, as though it was news to me. That's strange. Maybe call the bank. She studied me, trying to find a crack in my tone. Yeah, maybe. She didn't mention work. She didn't mention the boss, which told me exactly what I needed to know. That little grenade had gone off exactly where I wanted it. I let the silence stretch, then said, "You know, people think damage happens all at once. Big explosions. But it's usually just a series of small cuts. You barely notice at first." Her eyes narrowed. "What's that supposed to mean?" I smiled. "Nothing. Just an observation." That night, she stayed up later than usual, pacing the living room with her phone in hand. Every so often, she'd look toward my office like she wanted to say something. But she didn't. I went to bed before her, lights off, door shut. And as I lay there in the dark, I could hear the first quiet tear in her perfect little reality. The sound of someone who finally suspects they're not the one holding the reins. And that was just the beginning. The next morning was quiet, the kind of quiet that isn't peace. It's the space where tension hangs like heavy air before a storm. I was at the kitchen table, coffee in hand, flipping through the paper I didn't really care about. I could hear her upstairs, opening and closing drawers harder than necessary, the thud of heels on hardwood. When she came down, she had that look, sunglasses on, jaw set, lips pressed into a thin line. "I'm taking the car," she said. "All right," I replied, not looking up from the paper. She stood there a second longer, waiting for me to engage. When I didn't, she let out a sharp sigh and left. Through the kitchen window, I watched her pause in the driveway, pulling out her phone. I couldn't hear the conversation, but her shoulders were tense, one hand cutting through the air as she spoke. She got in the Range Rover and backed out fast. I already knew where she was headed. I gave it 20 minutes, then opened my laptop. A quick check of the tracker. Yes, I'd put one on the Rover 2 weeks ago, showed her at a small cafe across town. Not the one she usually met clients at. This one was quieter, tucked away, and had the kind of seating that made private conversations less likely to be overheard. I clicked the browser tab for my investigator's live feed. The camera view was grainy but clear enough. She was sitting across from him. Same man from the Burstone photos. Leaning in, speaking low. He slid a manila envelope across the table to her. She opened it, skimmed the contents, then looked around nervously. I smiled. If I had to guess, it was either money or a plan, maybe both. People like them always think they're the main characters in a heist film. I closed the feed. I didn't need to watch more. I'd get the photos later. Instead, I focused on my own play. The lawyer had called the night before with an idea. If she's desperate enough, she might try to liquidate assets before you can file. We need to make sure everything's locked down. That morning, while she was having her mysterious cafe meeting, I went down the list. Investment accounts, locked. Joint savings, drained into my private account. The deed to the house, already secured in a trust under my name. Even the sentimental stuff she thought she could pawn, my grandmother's jewelry, the limited edition watches, all moved into a safety deposit box 2 towns over. By the time she came home, she could have set the whole place on fire and still walked away with nothing more than smoke in her hair. When she returned, it was almost noon. She didn't say hello, just tossed her bag on the couch and went straight upstairs. I heard the closet door slide open, hangers scraping metal. 5 minutes later, she came back down with a small suitcase. "I'm going to stay at a hotel for a few days," she announced. I took a sip of my coffee. "All right." Her brow furrowed. "That's it? No questions?" "Nope," I said, turning a page in the paper. She stood there, suitcase in hand, waiting for me to break the silence. I didn't. Eventually, she huffed, rolled the suitcase to the door, and left. When the door clicked shut, I set the paper down. My phone buzzed, my investigator again. "She's not going to a hotel," he said. "She's pulling into the Burstone." Of course she was. "Keep eyes on her," I said. "And if she leaves anything behind, I want photos." While he handled that, I made another call, this one to my attorney. "She's checked into the Burstone," I told him. He chuckled. "Perfect. That's an easy timestamp for the file. You ready to drop the first hammer?" "Let's do it," I said. That afternoon, 3 separate envelopes went out. One to her brokerage's HR department, one to our accountant, and one to a man whose name she hadn't heard in years, her ex-husband. Each envelope contained select photos, not all of them, just enough to make a point. No commentary, no threats, just facts in print. The accountant's copy came with a note. Please review and ensure all joint filings are paused until further notice. Her ex-husband's copy? That was pure strategy. From what I'd heard, their divorce hadn't been clean. He'd have no problem adding a little noise to her life at just the right time. By early evening, I had confirmation that all three had been delivered. At 8:03 p.m., my phone rang. Her number. I let it go to voicemail. At 8:05, she called again. Voicemail. At 8:10, the text messages started. Her, we need to talk. Her, right now. Her, what the hell did you do? I didn't reply. At 8:30, another call. This time I answered. Her voice was tight, clipped. Did you send something to my office? I leaned back in my chair. Maybe. What? Don't play games with me, she snapped. My boss called me in and told me to take a leave of absence. Do you have any idea what this does to my career? Seems like a personal problem, I said. She went quiet for a moment. Then her tone shifted, softer, almost pleading. We can work this out, you know. We don't have to destroy each other. I let the silence stretch until she finally broke it. You think you're in control, but you're not. I'll land on my feet. Oh, I know you will, I said, smiling to myself. But not before I cut the ground out from under them. She hung up without another word. I stared at the darkened phone screen, feeling that calm, measured satisfaction again. The thing about revenge, the kind that really works, is that it's never about shouting or sudden blows. It's about slow dismantling, pulling out one brick at a time until the whole structure collapses under its own weight. And right now, she was standing in a house that looked perfectly fine, with no idea that the foundation had already turned to dust. The beauty of it? I wasn't even halfway done. The next morning, I woke before sunrise. Not because I couldn't sleep. I'd slept just fine, but because I wanted to be awake for the moment she realized the net was closing. The house was quiet. Her suitcase from yesterday hadn't returned. Neither had she. I brewed coffee, checked the news, and waited. At 7:42 a.m., my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I answered. Logan, a woman's voice said. Crisp, professional, and already irritated. Yes. This is Brenda Collins from Harrington Realty HR. We're calling to confirm that you and Mrs. Henderson are legally separated. I let my voice carry the weight of someone slightly confused but cooperative. Not yet. Why do you ask? Her leave of absence paperwork lists a separation date of 2 months ago. That affects her client assignments and commission eligibility. I made a small sound of realization. That's news to me, but I'm sure she'll get it sorted. I could almost hear the pen scratching as she took notes. We'll be in touch, Brenda said, clipped and formal. Perfect. Every word they'd feed back to her would sound like I was calm, collected, and letting her create the chaos. At 8:15, my email pinged, my investigator again. She'd left the Burstone early, just after 6, and wasn't alone. He had photos. Her mystery man. The same smirk, the same careless arm around her waist, walking her to the car. They kissed before she drove off. Time-stamped, crystal clear. Another nail for the file. I saved the images, then sent 2 of them to my attorney with a note. Add to Clause 14 evidence. High resolution. By 9 a.m., she finally called. Logan, she began, using that strained tone people use when they're trying to pretend nothing's wrong, but their voice betrays the tension. We need to meet. Lunch, maybe. I took my time answering. I'm busy today. It's important, she pressed. We should talk before this gets worse. Worse for who? I asked. She hesitated. For both of us. I let a pause hang, then said, You know, you're right. Things are better discussed in person. How about 2 o'clock at Carmine's? Fine, she said quickly, as if relieved. I ended the call and immediately texted my investigator. She agreed to Carmine's at 2 p.m. I want photos. The lunch wasn't for me. It was for the file. She'd expect a private conversation, but Carmine's had an open floor plan. No booths. Easy to capture expressions, gestures, even documents being slid across a table. At 2 o'clock, I walked in right on time. She was already seated, wearing a cream dress and that faint smile she uses when she thinks she's about to win. Thanks for coming, she said, gesturing to the seat opposite her. Saturday, what's on your mind? She laced her fingers together on the table. We don't have to do this the hard way. We can settle quietly, keep it out of court. No public mess, no lingering damage. I tilted my head, studying her. No lingering damage for you, you mean? Her lips tightened. It goes both ways, Logan. I could make this ugly too. I sipped my water, deliberately calm. You've already made it ugly. I'm just making it documented. Her eyes narrowed slightly. You've been talking to people. I didn't confirm or deny. I've been protecting myself. For the next 20 minutes, she tried different angles. Pity, nostalgia, even a little flirtation. All thinly veiled attempts to gauge what I knew and what I didn't. I gave her nothing. Just polite, neutral answers. The kind that make a person talk more than they planned. She admitted to spending time with her mystery man, but called it a phase, something that wasn't serious. She said the HR situation was a misunderstanding and claimed she could fix it if I'd just agree to certain financial concessions. All of it, of course, went into my mental transcript. My investigator was catching every shift of her expression. When the check came, she reached for it. Let me, she said. I didn't stop her. Watching her card get declined was more satisfying than I'd anticipated. Her cheeks flushed, but she recovered quickly. Must be the fraud alert. I'll fix it later. We walked out together. On the sidewalk, she tried one last time. Logan, please. This doesn't have to end with both of us broken. I stopped, turned to her, and said evenly, you broke us a long time ago. Now I'm just making sure the truth doesn't get buried with the pieces. She didn't answer, just walked to her car without looking back. That evening, I got a call from my attorney. The file's airtight now. I can draft the final papers and file within the week. But I assume you still want to let this simmer. Exactly, I said. I want her thinking she still has moves left. Because here's the thing about people like her. They can't help but play when they think they're losing. And every move they make just hands you more leverage. Sure enough, at 10:47 p.m., I got a text from an unknown number. Unknown, you don't know me, but I think we should talk about Vanessa. I smiled. This was the part I'd been waiting for. Her scrambling to build alliances, calling in favors, trying to spin the story. I replied, tomorrow, noon, my office. When the meeting came, it wasn't a stranger. It was her ex-husband, the one I'd sent the envelope to. He walked in, dropped a thick folder on my desk, and said, I've been waiting a long time to see her fall. You want to finish the job? I've got history. I opened the folder. Bank statements, old court documents, even affidavits from people who'd known her before me. It was like Christmas morning. By the time he left, I had enough to not only end this marriage on my terms, but to make sure she never recovered the image she'd built. That night, I poured myself a drink and sat in the quiet, looking over the growing stack of evidence. Every photo, every statement, every record, it was no longer just a safety net. It was a weapon. And the best part? She was still out there thinking she could turn it around. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost that IT didn't take long for her counterattack to start backfiring. Within days, word spread through her brokerage that she was taking time off for personal reasons. Clients started calling me directly, not because they wanted my side of the story, but because she'd already fumbled their trust. One of her big accounts, a developer I'd met at a charity gala, rang me up personally. Off the record, Logan, she's been bad-mouthing you. Problem is, she's contradicting herself. You might want to be careful. She's coming apart. Perfect. The cracks were showing, and I hadn't even touched the real detonator yet. That same afternoon, I got another package from my investigator. This one was a neat stack of signed statements from staff at the Burstone. Housekeeping, front desk, even a valet, all confirming she was a regular there with the same man. Each affidavit was notarized, time-stamped, airtight. I didn't even need to use them in court. Just knowing I had them was enough to keep her guessing that I sent her a short text. Dinner tomorrow. Your choice of place. Or something nice. I knew she'd bite. Curiosity is stronger than self-preservation in her type. She chose the new rooftop place downtown. Expensive. Flashy. Perfect. When I arrived, she was already there, glass of wine in hand, scanning me like she was trying to read my next move. So, she said, you ready to be reasonable? I leaned back in my chair, smiling faintly. I'm always reasonable. I just have different definitions. We danced around pleasantries, but I could see it. The subtle twitch when I mentioned mutual friends, the flicker of irritation when I paid for both dinners in cash, leaving her card untouched in her purse. Halfway through dessert, I slid an envelope across the table. Inside was a single sheet of paper, the prenup clause about infidelity, highlighted in yellow. Under it, a list of exhibit numbers matching my evidence file. Her face went pale. "This is your last chance," I said quietly. "Sign over your share of the house, the accounts, everything but your car, and I won't take this public." She didn't speak, just stared at the page. "Sleep on it," I said, standing. "You've got 48 hours." She didn't call. She didn't text, which told me she was in full scramble mode, calling lawyers, testing escape routes. On the morning of day 2, my attorney called. "She's stalling. Wants to negotiate." "Not anymore," I said. "File it." Within hours, the petition was filed with the court. But I'd added one more piece to the filing, an attached exhibit showing her resignation letter from the brokerage. How did I have it? Let's just say someone in HR owed me a favor. That letter, combined with the infidelity clause, painted her into a perfect corner. No income, no assets, no leverage. By that evening, my phone rang. It was her. I let it go to voicemail. Her message was short. "You win. I'll sign." We met at my attorney's office the next morning. She looked smaller somehow, not physically, but like the shine had been sanded off. She signed the paperwork without a word, eyes fixed on the table. When it was over, I stood, shook the attorney's hand, and walked her to the door. At the curb, she finally spoke. "Was it worth it, Logan? Burning it all down?" I smiled. "I didn't burn anything. I just took my matches back." She frowned, not understanding. Here's what I didn't tell her. I wasn't keeping the house, the accounts, or even the safety deposit box. The day before, I'd signed the deed and every account over to a charitable trust in my name, one she couldn't touch, one she'd never benefit from. Every dollar, every asset she thought she'd someday claw back, was gone from her reach forever. She'd spend years thinking I was sitting in her house, enjoying her life. The truth? I'd be living somewhere else entirely, lighter, cleaner, free, while her imagination did the rest of the work. The best revenge isn't making them watch you win. It's letting them wonder if you did. I stepped into my car, started the engine, and didn't look back.